So heavy weights or light weights? Which one do you think builds more muscle? Well, you're about to find out, but not before you're about to be tested. See, check out this clip of Jesse doing a dumbbell bench press. On the left, A, you'll see him using an 8 to 10 rep max, performing his repetitions, and on the right side, B, you'll see he's using a much lighter weight, somewhere in the 20 to 30 rep max. And all he's doing here is, again, performing his repetitions. I want you to analyze and tell me which one is more effective for building muscle. Be careful with your choice because, again, we're gonna grade you when this is all said and done. And here on the left-hand side, it looks like he's getting ready to reach failure, and about does it, okay? But he's still going over here at rep 18. There's 19, got a little grimace on his face over there. Looks kind of uncomfortable. 22, how far is Jesse gonna go here? It might matter for those of you that think that light might be useful. Here we are, he's getting at 24. Will he? Yeah, no, sorry. So he gets 24 to failure. Okay, what is your answer? Now, I know you could probably just fast forward until you get the answer, but that would be cheating. So what I'd rather you do is even have to pause the video, leave your answer and why you feel that way. And don't go back and change it later. I wanna know your real answer. Now, what is my answer? Well, I think I have to appeal to sort of the authority here. And I'm not it, because apparently in my last video where we talked about repetitions and how many you should be performing, there was an expert there. And he left a comment, and it said, to build muscle, you have to use at least 80% rep max. So easy. And he went on to say, directly at me, show us how much you'll increase the muscle with only 30% rep max. Stop, blah, 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 clown, party guy. I'm not a party guy, I don't know where that came from. Then he proceeded to say, ATHLEAN-X, stop, blah, blah, published a study proving that with only 30% rep max, you can increase the mass, if not, close this channel. And then he says, show me a natural bodybuilder training with only 30% of rep max, and once again, stop blah, 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 and party guy with the hat. Now, in the past, I've actually interacted with some of these guys, and one time in particular, we called him Professor Dickweed. This is his cousin, Professor Dick Wagon. But I have a reason for that, because if you answered lightweight, don't feel bad. You actually could be right. If you answered heavyweight, don't feel bad, because you actually could be right. If you answer both, that's what I answer, you're gonna be right. But it requires an understanding of the repetition continuum here, because when you understand this, you can make any of these work. And before we even have to go any further, he asked for studies, there's plenty of studies, and not just studies that prove that you can build muscle in any of these rep ranges, but there's actually real science being done on this every single day. And one of my friends, Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, has done plenty, and I'll let him explain for Dick Wagon, in his own words, why this is so.
So I had always thought that if you're doing anything over 12 to 15 repetitions, it's basically glorified cardio, and that, it's just muscle endurance, you're not going to gain muscle. The literature is now compellingly shown. There's so much literature on the topic. Our lab has done quite a bit of research, as well as many others. And it shows that you can gain muscle, similar amounts of muscle, regardless of the loading, across a wide range of loading spectrums, up to 30 to even 40 repetitions, which is that's a long set.
And again, that's a large amount of research that's being done to show this, but it's driven by a few different things, namely the fact that there's different stimuli here that drives muscle growth. The three main ones being the heavy tension and high tension we get down here in these lower rep ranges, the eccentric overload that's very possible as we get to sort of these mid-rep ranges here, and then the metabolic stress that we can get as we get all the way up into these higher repetitions. But knowing how to apply them is really critical if you want to see the gains from all these rep ranges. And it might just be that the person who did comment here never experienced any success with those higher rep ranges because he didn't apply them right. The first thing you have to understand is that your margin for error when applying these different stimuli for growth becomes very, very narrow when you get up into this range, meaning there's only one repetition that's going to matter here in terms of its ability to produce growth, and that will be the one repetition that you do that takes you to failure. And I mean real failure. Hold on to that for a second, because down here, we know that we can drive heavy tension just by lifting the weight. If we're using a 2 or 3 rep set, it's really heavy, we know that right away. And in this area here, applying those slower eccentrics like I covered in our 3 sets of 12 video that you're gonna wanna check out at the end of this one, becomes an easy driver of overload and also eccentric muscle damage that we know can cause growth. But look what happens here when we look at this rep scale again, this way. Subjectivity. What happens is that the scale of subjectivity becomes very broad as we get into those higher rep ranges, meaning no one's gonna question what it feels like when you reach failure here. And again, we're not talking about training for strength. You wouldn't really be training to failure here, but if you're training for size and you're using heavier weights, you know when you hit failure. You either can or you can't. When we get into this area, it starts to get a little bit more broad, but it's still pretty clear. Whether you end your set to failure at 10, 11, or 12, even the research will back up the fact that whether you take it all the way to failure or maybe a rep or two shy of true failure, you're still gonna get the same results. But when we get up here, it starts to get so muddy because what is real failure here? Are you really reaching it? When it starts to burn, that's not failure. That is not failure, that's not enough of a stimulus. You have to get to that really high level of intensity. And it might happen there, or it might happen here, or it might happen here, but it has to be a specific number based upon your effort. Let's go back to that set from Jesse, and let's watch. If he had decided to stop at the point he's going to stop, even though he's feeling a burn here, I could tell by the grimace on his face, is that really a stopping point there? I mean, I'm sure it was difficult, but no, we have to rewind that, pick those damn dumbbells back up, Jesse, and keep going. And I'm not saying that you can evaluate everything based on the look on his face or even the pace of the dumbbells, but I can tell you this, he's getting more repetitions, which means he did not reach failure. And I'm talking about pushing through this extreme level of burn until those dumbbells cannot move anymore. Now he's reached failure. Now that set has become an effective one for building muscle, even though it was light weights. And so if your answer to the quiz was that, yes, light weights is my choice for building more muscle, you could be right. Could be. Because it depends also on what you're doing right now. I think it's safe to say that we should all be doing all of it, and that was my original answer. Both. Why is that? Because all of them serve as a stimulus that you're going to need to adopt at some point. The guys that want to always lift heavy are going to find that that pathway will dry up at some point. So they start to veer into maybe this pathway or the eccentric overload that works really nicely in this rep range. But that creates muscle damage that oftentimes elicits muscle soreness. That can sometimes decrease your training frequency because of the after effects of having to train with that delayed onset muscle soreness. So that starts to become an impediment to you continuing your training. So then you have to sort of say, well, what else do I have? And I do have this option, and it works really, really well, especially if I haven't been doing it in a while. And that's where I want to make some recommendations, because I think you might think to yourself, well, how much of it should I do then? Well, let's say we address the guys that are over 50, because a lot of us will talk about these are the guys that have to stay away from the heavy weights. Just lift light. I know that was my answer because I'm an older guy. No, I don't recommend that. If you look at this chart here, this is my breakdown. Pretty much 50% of your workload. Let's see if you want to do it in terms of something you can kind of grasp. Think about your next 10 sets of your next workout. 5 of them should be in the moderate rep range, and that was in that middle range there, 6 to 12. Your heavy stuff, heavy, yes, there should be heavy here. 10% of your work should be in that heavy range. And here, 40% should be in that light range. Now, why is that? Because I believe that the overvaluing of just light weights here is a big mistake for men as we age. Because we need to maximize our strength and hold on to every bit that we have. And if you do not train in these heavier rep ranges and load up exercises appropriately, you're gonna lose your ability to hold on to those type 2 muscle fibers, which are also going to be responsible for you maintaining good strength and function as you age, decrease all kinds of mortality risk. So you wanna do that, but how do you do it? I always recommend you still lift heavy, but you lift slower. You keep your pace in control so that you can be in command of that weight, and it will still be very healthy. And when we get away from all the reliance on light weight here, we cut down on some of those repetitions. Because I will tell you, despite the fact that yes, the load could be a factor, the rotations on the tire count too. If all I do is even if I had no weight in my hand and I kept doing this, there is some wear and tear in the joints that will occur, especially as you get older, that if you keep relying only on light weight, it's not gonna be the path that you really wanna go down. So you wanna make sure you're veering into these 2 categories too. But certainly, there's a good amount of light weight here being used. The next group here, the strength focused guys. Now I get it. You're focused on strength. And maybe, again, this video is really geared more towards hypertrophy, but if you're focused on strength, then of course, about 60% of your work here is gonna be focused on doing that real heavy strength work. And then the 30% over here is still gonna be in the moderate range. But there's still gonna be a portion and a place for that light work as part of your overall approach. Even a good friend, Matt Wenning, has his Wenning warm-ups that he plans as part of his training. What purpose do they serve? Number one, they serve a neurological preparation purpose. In other words, they get your muscles ready to perform, and all these auxiliary muscles that help out the bigger muscles in performing those big lifts are required, and they should be ready to work for you when you need them. And that's what these do. And they also help to strengthen the weak muscles, the weak points, because you're only as strong as your weakest link. And when that weak link undermines your strength, you'll know it. So you want to make sure that you're still working on them here. And for the hypertrophy focused guys, which is most of us, who just want to build muscle, what should your breakdown be? Again, 50% I believe should be here in that moderate range. 25%, an equal amount to what we do for our heavy work, should be broken down as follows. Why is this? Because what I just said, you're going to need to build yourself around all three stimuli: tension, eccentric stress, and metabolic overload if you want to build the most amount of muscle. And dancing between these is the dance you need to learn and how you weave from one to the other. But I can tell you that having a place in your training for that lighter work, even if it's just body weight training, is incredibly important to not just building the most muscle, but being the most functionally capable. I can do something with the muscle I put on my body. I'm not just someone that looks good on stage, but I actually can perform with it. You're gonna need to do some of this light work, but make sure when you do, that you're doing it the right way and you're applying that intensity, that focus, that high effort. Learn to live with the burn and then go further until you can't even sustain another rep. That being said, you might get fatigued from doing that. You don't really mentally have the focus to do that over and over again. That's fine. Only 25% of it needs to be there. You still got these other areas that you can work with. The bottom line, guys, is if you want to build the most muscle, you must do both heavy and light. And that other video that I promised you, I will link for you right over here where you can learn more about that 3 sets of 12 mentality. All right, guys, I hope you found it helpful. Full programs over at ATHLEAN-X.com where we show you how to do exactly this and include a meal plan. Make sure you click subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss a video when we put one out. All right, guys, see you soon.